Unplug your cleaning routine with the Ryobi 18V One Plus cordless cleaning lineup. From tackling bathroom tile with the soap-dispensing telescoping power scrubber, to cleaning wet and dry messes with the 2-in-1 Wet-Dry Swift Clean Stick Vacuum, to cleaning up pet hair and debris with our advanced stick vacuum, Ryobi has a solution for every cleaning task. And because one battery powers over 300 products, you have the power to do more. Visit ryobitools.com to learn more. Sold exclusively at the Home Depot.
Hey, warmer from Evo! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, we are going to have Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports Report. He does an amazing job taking a look at so many different things out there in the Pacific Northwest. Got to dive in on Gonzaga losing to Santa Clara, and then Santa Clara probably getting boat raced by St. Mary's on Saturday. We've got Washington versus UCLA on tap. We've got to talk about both of those teams, and Washington needs to not lose that game. Going to be taking a look at the entire lay of the land in college basketball, as well as some of the teams that are ascending/declining, what to make out of 4 of the top 5 teams in college basketball according to the polls, which I do think is a little bit phony baloney, but that said, the polls, that out of their top 5 rated teams, 4 teams that lost in a 72-hour time span. So we're going to be taking a look at that and so much more with them. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every single game on the college basketball betting board for this Sunday as we hit some bank shots. And if you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter timeline at @GUnit_81/ my X timeline. Keep in mind letters M. Naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Otherwise, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And in my opinion, this is one of the best questions I've ever got, and I do want to go in on this. Eric Horvath asks this at @GUnit_81, says he's been a follower for years and has been profitable, so we appreciate you, Eric. And his question is, do I track teams in terms of an ATS mark in terms of my personal rankings, or do I take a look at teams that are struggling to be able to cover the spread? Do I take a look at pretty much these ATS trends that we've been seeing this season? And it is something that I keep in mind. Now, I will never place a bet based on what a team's against the spread record is. It really doesn't play any sort of an influence with regards to my numbers. Like, for example, those that have been following my DK Network write-ups, you know that last Sunday I came on here and I backed a Minnesota team that at the time was 13-1 against the spread. They were able to cover that one against Maryland. Promptly the next game against Indiana, I faded them. I was able to get there with Indiana. So it is one of these things where the ATS record itself, I do not concern myself with, though I am aware of it, because you do realize that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, well, this team has won 3-9 against the spread. They've burnt me. I'm not going to bet on them. And then the other team is like 9-2 against the spread. It's like, all right, this team has been making me a lot of money. We're going to back them. So I do think that I can find some edges with like fading some of these teams that have been super duper hot and being able to buy low on some of these teams. But personally, in terms of the actual handicap that I said, it doesn't play any influence there. Now, what I will do is I will keep in mind how I've been handicapping these teams and where I've come up short and where I've done well. I do not have like some sort of a ticker where I'm like, oh, against the spread for all 362 teams or anything like that. I don't keep quite that much track. With that said, if you take a look at the VSiN Live link that I post every single day with my handicap lines, you will see every single handicap that I've made thus far this season. I do save, and sometimes I do need to make adjustments, even though I might have hit the bet. Like, for example, if you had the over in Samford versus VMI on Saturday, where if you saw that game, Samford wins that game like 130-something to 96. You probably set your total too low and you probably need to shade it up. Even if you hit the over in that game, it's like, man, we were a little bit low, unless if you had a total north of 200. Like, that's something that I absolutely do, and sometimes you'll take it against a spread loss and you're going to leave there thinking, you know what, I didn't handicap too bad of a game. Team Y, they just got super duper hot from 3-point range. I made the line 5. I bet Team X getting like 6 points, as I thought the handicap should have been 5. They lose by 7 because another team went like 11 of 17 from 3-point range. Now, that's something that you don't want to overreact to, but you do want to be keeping in mind, like, man, this team has been burning me quite a bit. Like UC Santa Barbara, I was able to get away with it on Saturday, but they're a team that I've been trusting in too much this season. That's something that is top of mind for me. It's not like I'm like, oh, I've been 4-6 in Santa Barbara's last 10 games or anything like that, but I'm aware in the back of my mind, hey, I've been struggling to handicap this team. Maybe I need to adjust. Maybe these guys aren't as awesome as I was thinking, and vice versa. Like Iowa State towards the beginning part of the season, I thought that their numbers were set a little bit too high. They were able to cover a whole bunch of spreads, needed to make a little bit of an adjustment there. So hopefully that does answer your questions. I am a little bit aware of ATS record. It certainly is something that is top of mind. It doesn't play any sort of an influence with regards to my handicap. And when it comes to teams that I've struggled to handicap, I do keep that in mind. It's not like all of a sudden I'm going to make like some sort of a wild 5-point line move or anything like that. But that said, I do recognize when I've been falling short on teams and when I've been making a lot of money on teams as well, even though it's not like, oh, we're going to tally up every single result just because I would not have time to do this podcast if I tried to do so. But hopefully that does answer your question. Always do appreciate it. And now let's take a look back at everything that we got from a wild college basketball Saturday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
While Minnesota is currently the best ATS team in all of college basketball, how about if we give a shout out to number 2, Cal State Northridge, aka CSUN. They get another cover on Saturday, and yes, I'm going to lead with them because they're now 13-2 against the spread. Those that make us money get the love on this show/podcast. CSUN gets the job done against Cal State Fullerton by a count of 76-74. Team is playing some pretty solid defense. They did allow Cal State Fullerton to get to the line quite a bit, and Fullerton, to their credit, they went 20 of 22 at the free throw line, but CSUN overcomes that by being able to win the rebound battle 39-36, and they were able to get a pretty nice performance, 17 points, 6 boards from Keontae Jones, a man that followed his coach Andy Newman up from the D2 ranks, so a very nice win for CSUN. Also a team that is making a whole heck of a lot of money right now. How about the men of Troy? And they got the job done once again on Saturday. Southern Miss minus Andre Curbelo gets absolutely smoked, 82-56. And for Southern Miss, they go 4 of 19 from 3-point range. They lose their turnover battle, 18-9. They lose a rebound battle, 45-34. And for Troy, a very, very glorious win. If you're looking more at the power conference level, among your power 6 right now, the best ATS team, that'd be Arizona. They are 12-4 against the spread, but they were the victims of an upset loss. And we're going to talk about this one a little bit more with Curtis Rogers in segment number 2, but for Arizona, they lose on the road against Washington State, 73-70. For Arizona, just a cold day for them in general. Not even necessarily from 3-point range, 7-24 from distance. It's not great, but also inside the arc, this team took 58 2-point shots, and they only sunk 18 of them. So that was a little bit less than terrific. Washington State actually loses the battle on the glass, 48-37. Washington State plays pretty much even up with the turnover battle, 10-9. But for Washington State, they had on their side Isaac Jones, the Idaho transfer, 24 points, 13 rebounds. And all of a sudden for Arizona, it's been a little bit less than rosy for the team recently, where it's been very much all or nothing. This is an Arizona bunch that has now lost 3 games out of their last 7, and all of their wins, they have all come by at least 19 points, but it's either they're winning by a very wide margin or they're losing outright. So that's very interesting. And if you're taking a look at the Pac-12 landscape, I was personally one that took the points with USC and got away with this one. Kobe Johnson makes a complete and utter garbage 3 to be able to get the cover for USC. A USC team that, by the way, they were up 13 points at the half, and then they made like your buddy at the bar could not close, 68-58, the final for USC. They actually don't do a bad job of being able to shoot from 3, 5-17 from distance. The defense wasn't awful, but they lose the turnover battle 14-8, and this was just sloppy play in general from USC in the second half, as their leading scorer was Oziah Sellers coming in off the bench for 18 points, and it's a Colorado team that desperately needed a win. They've been a little bit up and down recently as well, and they were able to get that. And if you backed Oregon, they were close to being able to get you a cover. couldn't quite get there though, 80-73. This was a spot where Cal was up 18 points in the first half, by the way, and then they had regression hit them. We have seen a lot of that from Cal this far this season. That went 10 of 28 from three-point range. Jermaine Cuisinart for Oregon on that 10 of 28 three-point shooting performance. He goes 5 of 9 by himself, and Cal just 6 of 24 themselves. He did have Ferdinand Sabank along Jalen Tyson combined for 38 points, 19 rebounds, but even though Cal turns the ball over just 5 times in this one, Oregon only 4 turnovers, and Oregon now 10-6 against the spread after that one. If you're looking at more of your ranked teams, our DK Network write-up, it gets there. Bill Self, coming off the loss, has a hit rate of about 88%. To be precise, 117-18 coming off of a loss. 78-66 as the final. As this was a relatively nip-and-tuck game in the first half, but it was all about the Hunter Dickinson show for Kansas that was able to lead them to victory, especially in the second half. 24 points, 14 rebounds. He did exactly what you'd expect one of the most impactful transfers in college basketball history to do. He took over in the second half, and for Oklahoma, 6 of 20 from three-point range, a little bit cold there. Oklahoma actually wins the rebound battle by a count of 39-38, but KJ Adams was able to do his part, 15 points, 10 rebounds, and here's what won Kansas the game. They won the turnover battle 11-2. The 11 turnovers, not bad from Oklahoma, but just 2 turnovers in this game from Kansas. Dwan Harris had just 7 points, but he doled out the ball for 8 assists. So good on Kansas for being able to get us a nice winner there. And if you had Kentucky, this was not a winner. Kentucky, they fall to Texas A&M, this by a count of 97-92 in overtime. It's a win that Texas A&M so badly needed, and the Texas A&M team has been pretty putrid against the spread, clocking in at 8-8. I thought it was actually much worse than that. It feels like it's been much worse than that, as Kentucky is now actually 10-5 against the spread. And for Kentucky, they did go 15 of 39 from three-point range, but also for Kentucky, they lost the rebound battle by a count of 54-46. Despite getting 54 rebounds for Texas A&M, nobody had a double-figure amount of boards. It was just a group effort, though. Wade Taylor, Tyrese Radford combined for 59 points in this one. And then for Texas A&M, Trey Mitchell, he did have 13 rebounds and 6 assists for the team, but he saw in overtime a little bit less than a savory performance there. New Mexico, the unranked home team, laying points to the ranked road team. Well, they came through once again. 88-70 the final, as this has been a New Mexico team that has made you a whole bundle full of money, as well as they didn't necessarily shoot it well from three-point range in this one, just 7 of 24, but for New Mexico, you were able to get good production out of both Jalen House, Elijah Mashburn Jr., a combined 45 points, and then JT Toppin down low, 16 rebounds, as New Mexico wins the rebound battle 47-37 for San Diego State. They do turn the ball for 13 times in this one with Jaden Ledee jumping in there 15 points, but where in the heck is Lamont Butler? 7 points, 2 turnovers, 5 assists, just has not really been living up to his billing thus far this season, and Darian Trammell off the bench was able to have 12 points, but it's been a little bit of an issue in New Mexico. Now 12-5 against the spread. Colorado State out there in the Mountain West, they are now 9-5 against the spread after they were on a little bit of hiatus on Saturday, so they were able to get a little bit of R&R. But that said, also out there in the Mountain West is a team that's currently clocking in 4-11 against the spread in Wyoming, and they got the win, but not a cover against Fresno State, 68-67, and this team has not really been that great at home. Fresno State was leading by double figures in quite a few circumstances in this game, but Wyoming bailed out by the fact that they go 9 of 20 from three-point range. Wyoming loses the turnover battle 12-9. We've seen a lot of that thus far this season, and for Fresno State, they lose this game because they go 4 of 10 at the free throw line. Fresno State, they themselves just 5 of 10 against the spread thus far this season, so it has been quite a horror show there. Now, Detroit was able to get a cover, so yay verily for a Detroit team that has been lighting money on fire all season long, but they do remain your winless team in college basketball right now, as for Northern Kentucky, they made it a little bit closer than you would have probably liked, but they were able to get the job done, 81-76, as for Detroit, give a little bit of credit where credit is due. They were able to sink more shots than they're used to, as overall for the season, they're shooting darn near 26% from three-point range. It goes 7-25 from the outside. Jaden Sohn, their top scorer, was back in the fold. He was able to supply the team with 27 points. And with him back, I do think that Detroit is going to snap this 0-18 sooner rather than later. But for Northern Kentucky, they win the turnover battle 13-11. They win the rebound battle 30-26. And Detroit, right now, not experiencing any sort of greatness with regards to basketball. Football looking much better for that great state of Michigan rather than basketball. basketball, and IUPUI, old Huey, well, they're putting the PU in IUPUI. They're 4-12 against the spread, while Detroit is 4-14 against the spread. Oakland, they just absolutely bludgeoned IUPUI on the road, 88-66. Line was 12.5. A very easy cover here for Oakland, who goes 9-21 from three-point range, and IUPUI loses this game by 22, despite the fact that they went 6-14 from three-point range and won the turnover battle, because they lost a rebound battle 35-20. Oakland just completely plowed them on the glass, so that was interesting. I was alluding to this a little bit before, but for the first time in NCAA history, a team shot north of 50% from three-point range with at least 12 made threes and lost by north of 35 points. Samford, 134-96 winners against VMI, and this is the first time in my life that I took north of 20 points with a team that scored 96 points and they did not cover. VMI, 13-23 from three-point range. You had 22 points out of Tyshawn Jackson. He was able to go 6 of 8 from three-point range, but for Samford, they got 13-27 from 3, 52 of 87 overall from the floor. They win the turnover battle 27-15. This was one of those things where it's like, I don't know what I'm witnessing right now. It's quite interesting. That was pretty much the whole experience behind that one. So that was a game that I don't think we're going to see too much more of moving forward. And for VMI, that did drop them to now 4-10 against the spread. And Samford, credit where credit is due. They're 10-5 against the spread after that bad loss to Purdue to begin the season. This team has actually been relatively solid. What has not been solid has been backing UTEP on the spread, as UTEP, right now, they are your worst cover team in all of college basketball. 2-11-1 against the spread. They go to Florida National. Florida National in a lot of spots was laying a 1.5, and UTEP makes like your buddy at the bar and could not close. UTEP was up in this game 62-46 with 8.5 minutes remaining, and they lose 72-68. I mean, good grief. What an upchucking, and they give up the final 11 points of the game with less than 3 minutes remaining. Boy, this was rough if you had UTEP. UTEP, by the way, goes 8-14 from three-point range, 27-46 from the floor because they had 25 turnovers. 25! Florida International, not too much better with 21 turnovers, but you're able to have Javonte Hawkins coupled with Deshaun Giddens for this Florida National team combined for 39 points. So they're somehow, some way able to get the job done. Another team that's not getting the job done, as they are now 3-13 against the spread. Old Dominion. It's more like Old Awful. 79-75. Coastal Carolina knocks them off. Why Old Dominion was a road favorite, I don't think the world is ever going to know it. Old Dominion did it again. I mean, Old Dominion has blown so many leads this far this season. It's not even funny. They had control of this game in the second half. They were up by, I think it was 8 points with about 16 minutes remaining, and then they just let this game get away. As for Old Dominion, they went 8 of 34 from three-point range. They actually win the turnover battle 17-6, but they get pounded on the glass. I mean, if it's not one thing, it's another with this Old Dominion team. So that has been relatively rough. James Madison has been one of your best cover 8 teams in all of college basketball, staying out there in the Sun Belt, but his one belonged to App State. App State holds James Madison to 55 points, a James Madison team that has been a factory for scoring. 59-55 the final. James Madison now 10-5-1 against the spread, but for James Madison, they just could not get it going in this one. 3 of 17 from three-point range for Appalachian State. They win this game, by the way, despite losing the turnover battle 23-13, because they won the rebound battle 42-30. For James Madison, you did have Terrence Edwards go off for 19 points, but past that, nobody could really get anything going. And for Appalachian State, they were able to do just enough down low to be able to get the job done and to be able to get that win. So we saw a lot of intrigue out there in the Sun Belt, and also of intrigue is a team that has been playing a whole bunch of overs thus far this season, Arkansas Pine Bluff, but they did play their second under of the season. So your best over 8 team had 9 overs, 2 unders, and a push, but they were able to get a road win against Texas Southern by a count of 70-67. I think that there was a shot at the end that it looked like could have tied it, but I think it was waved off as Texas Southern 2 of 22 from three-point range. Oi! That was rough, as you did have Jonathan Cisse chip in there 21 points, but this is a Texas Southern team that is truly awful with their offense right now. Meanwhile, you were able to get 20 big points out of Kylan Milton for Arkansas Pine Bluff, a team that has been rough against the spread themselves, to be able to get it done. Mississippi Valley State, they entered into Saturday averaging 4 points fewer per 100 possessions than the next worst offense in all of college basketball. Really didn't help out that cause, as Prairie View takes them down by a count of 71-60. This was actually a cover for Mississippi Valley State, by the way. They were a 14.5 point underdog, but for Prairie View, they were able to have Charles Smith IV go off for 28 points, and for Mississippi Valley State, 22 made field goals, 22 turnovers. So not necessarily looking too tremendous there. Kentucky, by the way, they're actually your second best over team in all of college basketball right now. 12 overs, 3 unders for them. Another team that has been able to do a very good job to the over, that would be the Pioneers of Denver. They were able to pioneer another over as they were able to get it done against South Dakota State 99-80. Tommy Bruner at times has been the top scorer in all of college basketball. I think that he retains the title by being able to score 26 points in this one. And for South Dakota State, just 6 of 22 from 3-point range. They actually win the battle on the glass 32-30, but just too much Bruner to be able to get Denver another over and another W. By the way, USC, they were 12-3 to the over going into Saturday's action, so that under does drop them down a little bit more. If you're looking at your best under team in all of college basketball, that'd be Dartmouth. They were not in action on Saturday, but a team that was Middle Tennessee. Just 3 overs to 12 unders, and this one was a dead under. 60-51. Middle Tennessee falls in this one in a game that was ugly to say the least. And Justin Porter, he had for this Middle Tennessee team 29 points. Everyone else on the roster had 22 points. So not a lot of help there. Sam Houston State wins this game despite going just 3 of 18 from 3-point range, because they did go 15 of 16 at the free throw line. They won the rebound battle by a count of 43-33. So kudos to them. And Lamar Wilkerson was able to lead the team with 27 points. Another team that has been very good to the under, Western Illinois. A shout out to our good friend Mr. McDonald out there, who I know listens to this podcast, as Western Illinois was able to get a win in the Battle of Illinois over Eastern Illinois. This by a count of 63-60. So this one was a little bit of a slug, as well as for Western Illinois. They win this game shooting 7 of 13 from 3-point range. They were quite sloppy with the ball, 19 turnovers compared to Eastern Illinois' 4. Not very often that you see a team lose a turnover battle 19-4 and win the game, but a lot of that was because they also won the rebound battle. Western Illinois did by a count of 34-24. Eastern Illinois goes about 4 of 14 from 3-point range, so they weren't too bad there. But Western Illinois, they didn't get a lot of shots on basket, but they certainly made the most out of the shots that they did get. And it's been a Notre Dame team that has been playing a whole bunch of unders thus far this season to take a look at the ACC, but they were able to catch another under. They were not able to get another cover, though, as Notre Dame had covered each of their last 4 games. Florida State 67-58 winners there. As for Notre Dame, they do go 9 of 26 from 3-point range, but lose the turnover battle 14-8. They lose the battle on the glass as well. And you've got Marcus Burton, who's right now leading the country in turnovers with a little bit north of 4 per contest. He had once again in this one 4. Another team has been struggling quite a bit recently is Virginia, especially on the road. This team has had their issues. 66-47. Wake Forest just absolutely takes it to them. Wake Forest goes 10 of 21 from 3-point range. They did have 17 turnovers of Virginia 7, but for Virginia, they shot 28% from the floor. They actually shot better from 3-point range than they did from 2. They go 4 of 12 from 3-point range on their 2-point attempts. They went 12 of 45, so that was a bit of a strange result. And for Clemson, they're able to keep things rolling. They get a win and they get a cover against Boston College. That's about 10 to 10.5 point favorites. This by a count of 89-78. And this game got relatively hairy late as Clemson was up by 20 plus points with about, I would say, 9-10 minutes remaining. But Clemson able to close it out despite the fact that Boston College goes 10 of 25 from 3-point range. And big reason why. The Clemson Tigers win the battle on the glass 38-23. Quentin Post, he was not in this game, by the way, for Boston College. You want to be taking note of that, as Quentin Post has been by far their best player, so certainly a little bit of takeaway there. And takeaway from this is that Georgia Tech somehow, someway is a little bit of a foil to what Duke is looking to do. 84-79. Duke is able to avoid losing the season series and getting swept in the season series to Georgia Tech, but that said, this was a little bit of a nip and tuck game, as for Georgia Tech, they go 11 of 20 from 3-point range. Duke right on par with that. 10 of 21 from distance, with Kyle Filipowski having himself a day. 30 points, 13 rebounds, goes 4 of 5 from 3-point range, and Tyrese Proctor 3 of 5 from distance to be able to allow Duke to be able to stave off that outright loss. And for Georgia Tech, they also lose the turnover battle 14-4. And we've been seeing a lot of overs out there in the ACC, as right now, out of your teams in the ACC, only 3 teams have played more unders than overs: Notre Dame, Virginia, along with Virginia Tech. Meanwhile, Boston College and Clemson, they're both now 11 overs, 5 unders. You've got Florida State now at 10 overs, 6 unders, and then North Carolina, who just completely blew out Syracuse, by the way. This by a count of 103-67. This was just a complete and utter pummeling, as for North Carolina, they were able to go 22 of 27 at the free throw line, only shot 7 of 26 from three-point range, but Harrison Ingram, Armando Bacot, they combined for 27 points, 21 rebounds. They absolutely plow on the glass, and for Syracuse, Judah Mintz was able to give the team 21 points, but nobody else other than Quentin Copeland showed up to the game for this one. But for North Carolina, Pittsburgh, NC State, all 9 overs, 6 unders, and a push. By the way, shout out to Louisville. Their team has currently 9 overs and 7 unders, and they got a cover against NC State, 89-83. So they've been looking a little bit less sorry recently, but it's been a conference that has really been a haven of overs. Other top 25 teams that were in action on Saturday, you did see Wisconsin get the job done against Northwestern, 71-63. This was a number that was all over the place. A lot of places closed this one, right in that neighborhood, about 7.5, 8. If you were able to get a little bit lower on Wisconsin, you were able to get there with regards to a cover. As for this Northwestern team, man, talk about a team that just was unable to give you anything late, as Northwestern was down 63-62 with about 2:51 remaining, and they scored one more point the rest of the game. So that was a little bit less than terrific. Max Gleesman for Wisconsin, he was able to do a very rock-solid job, being able to chip in there 24 points, goes 5 of 7 from 3 in Wisconsin, 7 of 14 from distance. Wisconsin has actually been a team that's been playing quite a few overs and is now 10-7 against the spread. Meanwhile, you've got a Northwestern team that they themselves now 7-2 against the spread, so relatively quality win there for Wisconsin. Tennessee, a win but no cover against Georgia, 85-79 the final. This is a Georgia team that all of a sudden has been making you quite a bit of money. I believe they've now covered 5 out of their last 6 games, as Georgia now 8-7-1 against the spread, and we're going to get to the most disappointing team out there in the SEC in a second. But for Georgia, 14 of 33 from three-point range, with Jabari Abdul-Rahim being able to chip in their 21 points. And yep, most disappointing team out there in the SEC, that would be Arkansas. Arkansas is 4-12 against the spread, and just another sad display of basketball on Saturday. They get completely punked by Florida. This by kind of 90-68, and they were legitimately never in the game. The ball was tipped, and then they were just getting absolutely pounded. I think Florida was leading by something like 29-10 in the first 11 minutes, and Arkansas, they go 5 of 15 from three-point range, and they allow Florida to just go completely berserk, as Florida wins the battle on the glass, 48-31. They actually lose the turnover battle by kind of 12-9, but for Florida, Terry Samuel will be able to give you a double-double. Arkansas, just no fight in this game, so that was a bit of an issue, but they're right on par with Missouri in terms of it against the spread record. South Carolina, they take down Missouri in overtime, 71-69. It's about 3.5 point underdogs, and for South Carolina, they're now 12-4 against the spread and 14-2 straight up. This team just continues to back it up. Lamont Paris, how about the coaching job that he's doing with this team? As for South Carolina, a little bit uncharacteristic of them to lose the turnover battle 16-7, but they won the battle on the boards 43-32. Why Connor Vanover is not seeing more minutes for Missouri, I have absolutely no idea, as they've been getting pounded on the glass, and for Missouri, just 5 of 22 from three-point range for them. So that's a little bit of an issue, and what has not been an issue is getting covers for Auburn thus far this season, as Auburn, they get the win, and they get the cover in a lot of spots against LSU. This closed right around about 13.5-14, 93-78. They do take down LSU, and all of a sudden Auburn becoming quite a bit of an over team. Got a little bit sweatier than it needed to be, by the way. Auburn at one point was up 73-45. This team just looks like a machine right now. Auburn 10 of 25 from three-point range, Aiden Holloway 13 points, but just really, everyone was able to fulfill their role. Auburn, they win the turnover battle 17-8. This was a very quality and a very convincing win for them. Other teams in the top 25 that were on display on Saturday, Creighton, they just continue to not be able to get out of neutral on offense. They get the win, but they do not get the cover against St. John, 66-65, and all of a sudden, this is a Creighton bunch that has played to the under, and I believe now 5 out of their last 6 games for Creighton. They go from three-point range to 6 of 27. They find a way to get it done because they were able to play even up on the glass, despite the fact that Joel Soriano had a double-double, 13 points, 11 boards, as Beryl Shireman had 17 points, 12 rebounds. These two teams play even up with regards to turnovers, and it was all about just Creighton getting to the free throw line. They shot a little bit worse than St. John's. That's because St. John's went 7 of 8 from the charity stripe. Creighton goes 16 of 21, but them being able to get there, a lot of it was because they were at home. That was able to get them to the window on this one. And if you had Purdue, you should feel sick about this one. Purdue, it looked like, was going to be able to cover this game and cover this game very easily. They were up just throughout this game. As a matter of fact, Purdue just right out of the gate, they were up 35-12, and then Purdue inexplicably does not score for the final 2:43. Penn State able to cover this line, in which a lot of places closes this right around about 17.5 to 18. This by kind of 95-78. Zach Edey, giant of the earth, had himself another big game for a Purdue team that still has been a relatively good cover team. 9-6-2 against the spread. It's a Penn State team that all of a sudden they've been able to cover a few spreads, but they're still sitting at 7-10 for Penn State. They go 9-28 from three-point range, and they actually win the turnover battle by kind of 14-9, but they got punked on the glass. As Zach Edey had 20 rebounds, Penn State as a team had 24. That is not great to say the least. So I will say Ace Baldwin, 13 assists. So there you go for Penn State. And there you go for Utah State being able to get a road win against UNLV. They do not get the cover, as Utah State in a lot of places was about a 2-point favorite on the close. You were able to get a little bit more than that overnight with UNLV, but UNLV led throughout until they didn't. As a matter of fact, I think the first time that they trailed in this game was when Utah State had the 87-86 lead that they closed with. Utah State goes 10 of 21 from three-point range. They got a few free throws that were a little bit suspect towards the end of the game, and then Luis Rodriguez chips in there 23 points for UNLV. So UNLV actually still giving you quite a bit of a better effort than they were towards the beginning part of the season. It's a UNLV team that's now 7-6 against the spread, and Utah State with this against the spread loss, 8-6-1 against the spread. But that was certainly a result of intrigue, to say the least, and this one was very intriguing as well. This was a line of, in a lot of places, right around about 5.5 to 6. BYU, they were held down on offense, and it looked like they were going to get an easy cover. They are up 13 points with about 7 minutes remaining, but Central Florida, as long as you got north of 5, gets into the back door. 63-58 the final for BYU. They lose the turnover battle 13-11, and the rebound battle as well. Abrima Diallo, 11 points, 19 rebounds to use Central Florida into this one. And for Central Florida, only reason why they don't get the outright win, 21 of 33 at the free throw line for them. So that was another interesting result, and this was a bad beat if you had the under in West Virginia versus Texas. I did. 15 points in the final 28 seconds to ice that one. As for West Virginia, they get the win 78-73 against the Texas team that's just not been very impressive. And for West Virginia, 27 of 41 at the free throw line. That was something, to say the least. And for West Virginia, it's been an almighty slide for this team at just 6-10 against the spread. But this is a Texas team that's now 5-11 against the spread themselves. For Texas, they do go 9-22 from three-point range. Max Asmus 7-13 from three. And for those like myself that had the under, that last one that went, a little bit salty about that. Texas, they also lose the turnover battle 22-16. Also out there in the Big 12, you did see Houston lose once again, 68-67. TCU, they're able to get the job done outright on the money line. For TCU, 8 of 15 from three-point range. Houston, just 4 of 18 from distance. Houston wins the turnover battle by kind of 11-7. They win the rebound battle 38-37, but TCU just able to sink those threes. They overcome the fact that they shot just 16 of 29 from the free throw line to be able to get that one done. Also being able to get her done. How about Iowa State? This team has been pretty solid against the spread at 11-5. They take down an Oklahoma State team as of 4-10-2 against the spread. This by a count of 66-42. This Iowa State team is looking like the most supreme defense in all of college basketball. For Oklahoma State, 15 made buckets, 20 turnovers. That is not going to win you a lot of games. Meanwhile, for Iowa State, another very solid performance out of Team and Lipsby, 17 points, 5 steals, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, and a partridge and a pear tree. And then Baylor, they get the win, but they don't get the cover. They're now 10-4-1 against the spread, 62-59. They take down a Cincinnati bunch that made themselves now about 7-9 against the spread for Cincinnati. They go just 4 of 21 from three-point range. Baylor, you figured there'd be a little bit of coolage for the team. They entered into the day your number one team in terms of three-point shooting percentage at well north of 43%, just 5 of 20 from distance, but they were able to do a nice job of being able to get themselves chances at the free throw line. They go 13 of 18 there. You still had Jacoby Walter, Ray J. Dennis be able to combine for 25 points. Dennis, 9 assists, a true turnover, so he was able to keep it relatively clean there. And for Cincinnati, they just could not do a good job inside the arc as well, as they go 4 of 21 from three-point range, but inside the arc as well, they were only shooting about 50%, which is where typically their bread and butter is had. And in this game, they had Aziz Bendango being out of the fold as well. So something that you do want to be taking note of. And with regards to college basketball, we saw a whole bunch of crazy results on Saturday. If you're looking at the trends of college basketball, overall for the season, overs are now hitting at 51%. We've seen a nice little run on unders. 1,387 overs, 1,331 unders. Home underdogs overall for the season, 341, 335 at 13 against the spread. Favorites continue to be doing a relatively solid job. Darn near 51%, 1,377, 1,326, and 44 against the spread. If you take a look at the last 7 days in college basketball, it has been just a palooza of unders. 164 unders, 152 overs, with home underdogs in the last 7 days going 56, 52, and 2 against the spread, and favorites 163, 150, and 6 against the spread. So favorites in the last 7 days hitting at darn near 52.1%. That's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Saturday. And coming up next, let's take a look at things out there in the Pacific Northwest, the Pac-12, Gonzaga, and so much more with our good friend Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VC Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by this man, as Curtis Rogers. He does such a good job taking a look at this game that we all know of college basketball, and this has been one of the busiest men in terms of sports media that you're going to find, as he's out there in the great state of Washington. So they go from playing in a national title game on Monday to having their coach leave for Alabama in the same week. You've got Gonzaga and everything that's been happening with them. We've got a Sunday game involving the Washington Huskies as well, so no shortage of things. Oh, yeah, Pete Carroll is no longer the coach of the Seattle Seahawks as well. I mean, good gosh almighty. It has been a lot going on out there in the Pacific Northwest. And to be able to follow Curtis on Instagram and on X, that is at A Kid From Kent all together. And Curtis, it's always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, I cannot tell you how much I was looking forward to talking to you today, because just the week that was here in the Northwest, just pure insanity on all fronts with nearly every team in town. Things are so crazy that Gonzaga is about to fall out of the AP Top 25 here coming up on Monday. So things are just completely upside down. Everything that once was is no longer here in the great Northwest, but that's why we love sports. That's why we do what we do, for the chaos, for the madness. And, you know, here in the Northwest, it's getting a little mad, but still got a couple more months before it gets even crazier around the entirety of college basketball.
For those that love football, the sidelines are not looking like how they once did. And for those that love the college basketball poll, on Monday it's not going to be looking like it has for a very long time as Gonzaga, unless if voters are just completely brain dead. They're going to be falling out of the polls. And do want to start there. They lose to a Santa Clara team that then on Saturday is down 29 at the half against St. Mary's. I guess that was a little bit of a sleepy spot for them. But that said, what do you make right now out of a Gonzaga team that defensively, they honestly don't look horrible, but you can tell that they're just really lacking in the backcourt. And just from me watching this team, I'm sure you might have a little bit of a different take, but I think the biggest takeaway for me is that Ryan Nembhard has been one of the biggest transfer portal disappointments here this season.
Absolutely. Nembhard has led the Zags in scoring just one time this season. Now, scoring isn't necessarily his game. He's racking up the assist totals. He's been their leading assist getter for most games this season, but boy, the expectations that were placed on Nembhard coming over from Creighton this past offseason, going to Gonzaga, a situation where it was like, oh, his brother played there. I mean, everything is just set up for the Zags to get back to the NCAA tournament. I still think the Zags can do that, but right now, I mean, you're looking at the West Coast Conference as maybe a two-bid league at this point. You talked about Santa Clara getting that big win against the Zags and then immediately following it up with what will likely be a nice little turn in the punch bowl on Saturday. That is just not how you want to follow up a big-time win against a program like Gonzaga. Now, maybe Santa Clara was a little charged up. I know Steve Nash was in the building against Gonzaga, so, the greatest player in program history. That'll get the people going, but I'm looking at the Zags ball club, and I'm looking at just all their leading scorers this season. Graham Ike has led the team in scoring in the most number of games this season. I did not have that on my score sheet early on this season. I looked at maybe, Nolan Hickman or Anton Watson. Watson, he went for 32 in that game against Santa Clara. I mean, maybe that's the guy who they need to start running the offense through, because right now they just have not been able to get buckets in an easy way. And one thing I noticed too, and you mentioned it, kind of alluded to it in the open there, about how tough it is to win on the road in college basketball these days. I'm looking at Gonzaga's schedule. They go 19 days between home games. January 6th, that win against San Diego. They don't return to the Kennel until January 25th against San Francisco. That is a long time to be away from home in college basketball. They do get that week break between the Santa Clara game and their upcoming game against Pepperdine, which is going to be on the 13th of this upcoming week. But to be away from home in conference play for that long, that's going to do a number on your team, and the Zags are really hurting as they enter into the midway point of conference play in the WCC.
It's just absolutely wild what we're seeing out there in the WCC, where San Francisco might be looking like that top team right now. Though St. Mary's, they came out and they certainly made a statement on Saturday, to say the least, as well. But very strange times out there in the great state of Washington, where the Huskies might be looking like that top team. As joining me on the show, we do have Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I do want to hit on the Washington Huskies, because they are going to be playing that game on Sunday against UCLA. And right now we find them on the road in Pauley Pavilion as a 3-point favorite. And that speaks to two things. One, this Washington team has been able to rise up a little bit more. I'm not going to say it's been an amazing season, but you know what? In terms of what we've seen the last few seasons, Washington, I'm sure that they're going to take it. And for two, good grief, UCLA losing by 46 against Utah earlier in the week. I mean, what do you make out of this game, for one? And two, both of these teams, because with Washington, you could tell that they're fighting for Mike Hopkins' job, and I would say that to have him off the hot seat right now would be too far. To say that he's going to get canned would be too far as well. I think that this is very much in the balance, going to be based on what we see in Pac-12 play, but I think that this almost has to be a must-win to avoid sort of embarrassment for the way that UCLA has been perhaps that most disappointing team in all of college basketball this year.
Yeah, this UCLA team has completely mailed it in. Mick Cronin, you can tell with each post-game press conference, or let's say the post-game press conferences that he shows up for, because he did not show up for the one a couple games ago as UCLA has just stacked losses here over the last few weeks. I'm stunned that UCLA is what they are here in 2024. If you had told me that the Gonzaga-UCLA Sweet 16 game a year ago, which was a classic, Julian Strother with that big shot at the end of the ball game, I can envision it right now, and how great of a matchup that was between two veteran ball clubs. To see both of those schools fall off the way that they have. Now, Gonzaga hasn't completely fallen off. They still have NCAA tournament hopes, but UCLA, unless they win out, you're looking at a team that is probably not even going to play in the NIT this season, which is really stunning. Now, everybody kind of expected them to take a step back this season, but to be where they are, losing to Cal, losing to Stanford, getting blown out by 46 to Utah, it makes zero sense at all. Washington, if they want to say that they are a threat here in the Pac-12 this season, or at least a team that should be vying for one of the first-round buys in the Pac-12 tournament, a win over UCLA is going to go a long way. I like that they bounced back from that 0-3 start they had in conference play, picking up wins against Oregon State and ASU over the last couple of days. UCLA, Cal, Stanford, all three are on the road, but all three should be winnable ball games for this Husky team. I really like the production that they've gotten from Keon Brooks this season. He's a lock, I think, for first-team All-Pac-12 this year. He's been just fantastic for UW. One interesting thing to watch out, though, with Mike Hopkins' coaching situation is obviously the big question mark with the football program is like, hey, you've got to pay a head coach now. You don't want to have to pay a buyout for Mike Hopkins, which will then hamstring all the money that you could give towards whoever is going to be the next football coach. So maybe that buys Mike Hopkins another year just by happenstance. I think this has been his best coaching job in quite some time. To see them at 10-6, hovering around 500 at this point in Pac-12 play, it beats the expectations I had for them, and I think Keon Brooks is a big reason for that. He has been fantastic this season.
Yeah, Keon Brooks has been incredible. Xavier Wheeler, you know that you're going to get the turnovers with them, but he's done a nice job doling it out as well. And it does feel like these guys are doing a relatively solid job playing in concert with one another in a Pac-12 that we all know that Arizona is that top team, but they certainly had a rough go of it on Saturday going up against Washington State. And just what do you make out of the Pac-12 right now? As we're doing this, as some of these Saturday games have yet to finish up, we do not know how Oregon was able to do against Cal. But I take a look at this conference, despite the fact that Arizona's had a few ups and downs. They're clearly the top team in this conference. And then after that, I feel like there's so much mystery, especially with Colorado dealing with all of their injury issues.
Yeah, Colorado, they went to Tucson last week. They pulled UCLA against Utah, getting their doors blown off down in the desert. But Arizona, that loss to Washington State, they kind of feel like last year's ball club to me, where you know what their best is, and that's one of the top, if not the best team in the country when they are completely on. But they have been susceptible to the weird loss, the unexplained loss, the blowout loss to Stanford a couple weeks ago, losing on the road to Washington State. They had never lost to Washington State with Kyle Smith as the Cougs head coach prior to last season. Last year, they lost to Washington State in Tucson, the first time Wazoo had ever beaten a top 5 team in their program's history. So Arizona, to me, yes, they are the best team in the Pac-12 talent-wise for sure. I don't think there's really any team that comes close to them, but they are very susceptible to losing a weird game here or there. I still think they are going to be the Pac-12 regular season champs, even though they are now a game and a half back of Oregon. Oregon is a team that I'm looking out for, Greg. The preseason expectations for them weren't exactly sky high coming off of a couple of disappointing seasons, but they're off to a 4-0 start. They're 12-3 overall. They're not ranked yet, but I think if they can continue to pile some wins here in Pac-12 play, then I think they should be a team to watch out for, especially, as maybe one of the top 2 seeds come time for the Pac-12 tournament in Las Vegas. They've got 2 really tough road games at Colorado, at Utah. We're going to really learn about this Oregon team, see if they're for real, see if they're a team that can challenge Arizona for the top of the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah, this Pac-12 is going to be a wild ride, to say the least, and Arizona is still that top team, but they've been looking a little bit wobbly in some of these Pac-12 games. They've been an all-or-nothing team. They either completely blow you out or else they take the outright loss like we saw on Saturday. So they've been intriguing to take a look at as Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And it's par for the course in what we're seeing in college basketball right now, because prior to Saturday, we had seen teams 1, 2, 3, and 5 all lose in a 72-hour time span. Arizona means that number 8 went down over the week as well. What do you just attribute all this attrition and all these upsets too? Because it has been one of the more wild weeks of college basketball that we've ever seen in a sport in which it's always wild.
Yeah, definitely. Kentucky, you can add them to that list too. They lost to Texas A&M and College Station today.
Oklahoma's number 9, they lost.
Exactly. It's everywhere. I mean, conference play, really, there's just nothing like it. And it's so hard to explain why in conference play you can see a team lose at the drop of a hat. It's even more unpredictable than non-conference play. And I get that, teams, they schedule tough non-conference games. It's easy to get up for, but you go on the road to a place where it's not necessarily a destination you're looking forward to going to. Use Arizona and Washington State as the example here. It was negative temperatures in Pullman, Washington today. You think the guys from Tucson, Arizona wanted to be there at any point over this weekend? No. So, that will really throw a team off going into an environment like that. You look at all these other teams, when Purdue is on Nebraska's schedule, you're going to get everybody's best shot. That is the biggest show in town, and Nebraska came away with a big win over Purdue this week. So there's just so much to be said about conference play. It is the ultimate test, I think, for a lot of these teams, because you see everybody twice. You know what they can bring. You got to be on your game, or else you're going to get knocked off. And not only are you going to get knocked off, but it's going to be the biggest win of these other teams' seasons for sure. Like, you are going to get everybody's best shot when you go into their building. It's a lot different than playing at a neutral site. It's a lot different than playing at an NBA arena when the big majority of the opposing crowd is not for you. That can get into the head of these, 18 to 22-year-old kids out there, because these gyms can get really hostile, and there's nothing else to do when it's brutally cold outside but to go indoors.
Yeah, back when I was over in college in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, you had two options. You could watch some sort of a sporting event, or you could stay inside and drink some beer. And typically I would do both on any given night. So I hear that as Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, trying to be right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Curtis, do I have to ask you about this as well? Because we have seen so much attrition. We have seen just so much craziness in college basketball over the last week or two. Is there a team or two that, because of what we've seen over the last week or two, that now you're feeling either much more bullish on or much more bearish on based on what we have been seeing and some of the upsets that have been ensuing?
Well, one team that I'm looking at that I think has not been able to really show this year why they are ranked so high, that'd be the Texas Longhorns. And I look at them, they lost to UConn, they lost to Marquette in the non-conference. They get a big test with West Virginia, lose that game. Look at the Longhorns right now as a team that I can kind of see why they're still in the top 25. I mean, obviously with this loss to West Virginia, they're probably going to get knocked out going into next week. But then they've got a big 4-game stretch here coming up, Greg. You're looking at Baylor, Oklahoma, BYU, and Houston, all four of those teams in the top 18 of the AP poll right now. And that's 4 straight games, 2 of those on the road. Oklahoma and BYU, you got Baylor at home, and then Houston, who is getting a test today, I believe, against TCU. So that'll be an interesting matchup. The Big 12 is just going to be just a bloodbath. I'm wondering if Texas is built for it right now, because I'm just looking at that schedule, Greg, and they have not really proven why they should belong in the top 25 yet. And that stretch of those 4 games, I think, is really going to show if this Longhorns team is for real or for not.
Yep, Texas losing to West Virginia, who entered 5-10 straight up. They were without Jesse Edwards as well. That is not a great loss, to say the least. And it's a Texas team that it looked like they were rebounding a little bit, but that is not helping their cause. But a man that always helps out our cause and always does great work whenever he's on the show, that'd be you, Curtis. You do such an incredible job out there in the Pacific Northwest, taking a look at this game of college basketball that we all know and love. And you've had to do a little bit of everything this week. College football, the NFL, college basketball. I'm sure that hot stove is heating up with regards to the Seattle Mariners, as we know that management over there never sits on their hands as well. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
God, yeah, it's Coaching Search Central up here in the Northwest. And Greg, you mentioned it. They made that Robbie Ray, Mitch Haniger trade, too, about a week ago. It feels like forever ago. There's something for everybody going on right here. It feels kind of like the heart of professional sports right now, or at least teams that have been eliminated, because, you got the NFL playoffs going on, whatever. But, yeah, it has been very busy up here. So all the craziness that you could ever want in the course of a week, we've got it. SeattleSports.com is the place to be to check that out. You can download those podcasts that Greg mentioned, wherever it is you get your podcasts, Apple, Google Play, Spotify, and then follow along on Twitter and Instagram, @AKidFromKent. And Greg, always love talking college basketball with you. Love being indoors this time of year. It's 18 degrees here up in the Northwest. So love being able to just bundle up on the couch and throw on some college hoops. And what a week it's been all across the country. I'm looking forward to what conference play has in store.
Yep, it is going to be a lot of fun to be able to decipher, and it's sometimes maddening, but it is always a whole bunch of fun. We love chaos, and we love getting Curtis Rogers on this show. He does tremendous work over at 710 Seattle Sports. So big thanks to him for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Curtis Rogers. He does such good work over there at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. Certainly no shortage of things happening out there in the Pacific Northwest. The struggles of Gonzaga. You got Washington, who's going to be in action today. Certainly with regards to Washington, the Huskies looking for a new football coach and so much more. And Curtis does a great job of being able to take a look at it all. So big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GN_D1. We're going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order, which today is time order. We don't have any games from the smaller conferences that get added to the extra games board, so that'll keep things very easy. The one thing is we are going to have a few skips. Looks like Fairfield, Canisius, and Niagara versus Siena, as of right now, have been postponed. We've got quite a few Metro Atlantic games, so there might be a few others that get postponed as well, so you might be seeing a few skips on this podcast along the way as a result, but that said, we're going to give you everything that we've got on the board, and this does begin with 8-11, 8-12 on the betting board. It is Georgetown, and they are going to be on the road. They're going to be facing off against UConn, and UConn, well, they are a massive favorite. They are 20.5 point favorites, and total on this game is anywhere between 145 and 145.5, and there's no question UConn should be a rather sizable favorite in this spot. I do think we went just a little bit too far, though. I personally made my line a 20.5, so this is a spot where we need to get down to more like a 20 and 19.5 for me to be able to take it. We're seeing some 21s out there as well, and 21 would be my buy point on Georgetown. With this Georgetown team, it's a wreck on defense, not going to lie. They're well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, the UConn team that's in the top 10 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This is a UConn team that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're number 50, but they're actually allowing right around 20.8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than on the road. And does need to be factored in then. You still have Jonathan Klingen, giant of the earth, dealing with a little bit of an injury. And when it comes to this Georgetown team, you do have Jaden Epps, who's able to throw the ball in the basket. 18 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. It's not a bad three-point shooting Georgetown team. They shoot as a collective about 35% from the outside. And certainly this team is going to get supremely cooked down low. But see what I did there? Supreme Cook has been able to do a solid job. He's been able to give this team right around about 8 boards per contest. I do like what he's been able to bring to the table. And this is a UConn team that, in terms of their three-point shooting defense, to run 48th in all of college basketball. Now, with UConn, they've got so much versatility to be able to make do with it. You've got Cam Spencer. You've also got Tristan Newton. These two guys have both been able to give you in that neighborhood about 15 to 15.5 points per contest. Spencer, the better three-point shooter, at 45%. Newton, he gives you 6 boards, he gives you 6 assists. You've got Spencer chipping in there right around 3.5 assists per contest. And even though Klingen's dealing with an injury, you've got Alex Caravan, who gives you 6 boards. He's able to shoot 38% from the outside. It's a UConn team that they play a little bit of a slower tempo, but they do a nice job taking care of the ball with about 10.5 turnovers per game. And it is a Georgetown team that has been relatively rough with their offense, 70 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slower scoring slog in this one. As a result, I did place my total more around a 140.5. I'm going to be taking a look at this total under. That said, now that we're starting to get to 21 in some spots, I do think we've went just a little bit too far. So anything north of 20.5, I'm going to be taking the points with Georgetown. And here at this total of 145.5, going to be taking a look at the under. 8-13, 8-14 on the betting board. Rutgers hits the road to face off against Michigan State. Michigan State is a favorite of 11.5 to 12 points. So on this game, 136.5. I do think that Michigan State is going to be able to bounce back after a poor showing a few nights ago. That said, this is a spot where at a 12, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Rutgers. It's a Rutgers squad that is not very good offensively, well outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis in a road/neutral court environment. And you do want to take account of the home and road splits when it comes to Rutgers defense, as well as for Rutgers, this team is allowing about 26 more points per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. But I do think that they're going to do a solid job being able to buckle down from three-point range just enough to be able to hold in there. This is a Michigan State team that has been able to heat up from three-point range. Meanwhile, with Rutgers, they allow opponents to shoot about 29.2% from three-point range at home, more like 35% on the road. Ty Walker is going to be your best scorer in this game for Michigan State to be able to log about 20.5 points per contest. Throws in their 3 assists, shooting 39% from 3 for a Michigan State team that over the last, we're going to call it about 45 days, they are shooting north of 38% from 3 as a collective. AJ Hoggard, 5 assists and 2 turnovers per game. So this team has done a really nice job of being able to take care of the ball. And this is a Rutgers team in which one of their lifebloods is being able to just generate these turnovers, be able to create a lot of havoc. And I do think that they're going to have their issues with that. But they do now have Muat Mogg back in fold. He does a really nice job of being able to give this team just a little bit more flow on offense. At 6'6", he's able to pop some threes. He's able to give you a few rebounds. So that's big for a Rutgers team that They are a top 20 team getting back to the turnovers. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, when it comes to Andre Hyatt, he's got good versatility as well. Along with he and Mogg, they combine for about 11 rebounds per game. Hyatt is shooting 35% from three-point range. It's a Rutgers team that they don't do a bad job of being able to maintain the ball. 11.5 turnovers per game. And Cliff Umber down low, 9 boards, 10.5 points, and 3.5 blocks per contest. That blocks mark is a top 5 mark in all of college basketball. Expected a little bit more this year out of Derek Simpson, Noah Fernandez. These guys are combining for about 17.5 points per contest. So I do think that this is going to be a slow bleeder of a game. This is a Michigan State team that has really been able to buckle down with regards to their defense as well. It's not quite on par with what Rutgers is able to do at the rack, but with that said, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, you're staring at a Michigan State team that is in the top 50 with that regard. They've really been able to slow things down, so I just don't see a lot of scoring in general in this affair. This is a spot where I did set my total at a 131 at, by the way, if you're wondering, on the home and road split for Michigan State. They are allowing about 23 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/court environment. So looking at the under and at anything of a 12 or higher, going to be taking a look at Rutgers. This is going to be the DK Network write-up. Pick 815, 816 on the betting board. Florida Atlantic is playing us to UAB. The Blazers of UAB are an underdog of 16 points. So on this game, 152.5. Did set my total 156.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. Much of it is because you've got a Florida Atlantic team that is not doing a tremendous job defensively, and that leads into my DK Network write-up. I'm taking the points with UAB. This is a line I felt like should have been closer to 10.5. For UAB, this team has actually done a better job defensively on the road rather than at home. They're allowing 5.1 points fewer per 100 possessions in a road/court environment rather than when they are at home. And when it comes to this Florida Atlantic team, they are now about 122nd in all of college basketball. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And for UAB, they shoot less than 30% from three-point range at home. They're a top 70 team in all of college basketball when it comes to three-point shooting on the road. Right around 35.2, 35.3% from distance in a road/court environment. You don't have that one demonstrative scorer for UAB, but you've got 5 guys working in concert that all give you at least 9.6 points per contest. Eric Gaines still only shooting about 23.5% from three. Last year, that was closer to 33%. I think we should see a little bit of positivity there, but I do think that down low, you've got a chance with Yaxel Lenborg doing a good job pulling in their 9.5 rebounds per game for a UAB team that, while they're just 99th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they do hike up into the top 75 in a road/court environment, and much of that is because they've been able to do a good job of being able to hit the offensive boards. They do grab north of 33.5% of their misses as an offensive rebound, 25th in all of college basketball. Florida Atlantic, they allow opponents to grab north of 27.5% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That is 188th in all of college basketball. Now, for Florida Atlantic, you've been able to get some good production out of Vladislav Golden. He's been able to give you 7 boards. He gives you a block and a half plus per contest, and then I do like John Carlos Rosado. He's able to give you about 7 points, 4 boards, and this is a UAB team that they themselves allow opponents to shoot north of 35% from three-point range away from home, but their three-point shooting defense has actually been better on the road than it has been at home. Florida Atlantic, no question, this team is going to be able to put the ball in the basket. It's still a top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Elijah Martin, along with John L. Davis, have been your main 2 scorers in the backcourt. They've been able to combine for a little bit more than 29 points per contest. The Davis chips in there 6.5 boards, nearly 2 steals, 2.5 assists, shooting 44% from 3. He's been pretty terrific for this team. They were dealing with a little bit of an injury to Nicholas Boyd. They've gotten him back in the fold, but for this Florida Atlantic team, in conference play, they're allowing opponents to shoot north of 36% from three-point range. They've yet to cover any of their games out there in American Conference play. They came close against East Carolina, but that was a number that was just a little bit too lofty, and I think that this is the same case here. Meanwhile, you've got a UAB team that they've been able to do a very solid job with their offense recently. As a matter of fact, they've gotten to at least 75 points in every one of their games in their current win streak, as they've been able to win now 6 games in a row, and for that matter, they've gotten to at least 75 points in all but one of their games really since the beginning of the month of December. So I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. I did set my total at a 156.5, and with my DK Network write-up, I feel like Florida Atlantic is overvalued. So my write-up is going to be taking 16 here with UAB, and I'm going to be taking a look at the over. 817, 818 on the betting board. Wichita State plays us in Memphis. Memphis is a 5.5 point road favorite. Totals between 153 and 153.5, and with this Memphis squad, did set them as 4.5 point favorites. So you're at the 5.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Wichita State. Wichita State does a really good job of being able to rebound by committee, as you've got 3 separate guys that will be able to give the team at least 6.4 rebounds per game. Dallin Reginald, the long Quincy Ballard, these two guys have done a nice job being able to combine for in that neighborhood about 14 rebounds per game, 15 points between the two of them. Now, Wichita State not shooting it very well from three-point range. You're only shooting about 30.5% from distance, but I do think that this Wichita State is going to be able to buff up a little bit more on defense. It's a Memphis team that is doing a better job of being able to take care of the ball. They are still a team, though, that they're going to get a little bit loose with it. Javon Quinterly, like him in the backcourt, 13.5 points, 4.5 assists, shoots 35% from three, but still 13.5 turnovers per game. That's still a little bit more than what you'd like to see. Now, this is a Memphis team that they themselves have so much rebounding, and it does start with Davy Jones, 21 points, 7 boards, 2 steals. Guy is shooting it well from three-point range, but Memphis is about 187th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rates. So I do think that Wichita State has a nice edge there. They're about 65th in all of college basketball. This is a Memphis squad that they've got a lot of good versatility and a lot of athletes, but sometimes it feels like they're a little bit of fish out of water. Nequan Tomlin has come in, and he's been able to give the team 10 points, 6 boards, so he fortifies things a little bit further for the team, and Memphis has won every game ever since Tomlin has been in the fold, but this is a Memphis squad that is cutting it very close right now. Each out of their last 5 wins have been by 11 points or fewer. I don't think that they have covered a single spread since perhaps that SMU game, and I do think that for Wichita State, even though they're on a 4-game losing streak, they're going to be able to keep this one rather snug as well. It is a Wichita State team that defensively, they've still been able to do their part as they have allowed 70 points or fewer in now 3 out of their last 5 games. I do think that Wichita State, even though they're an up-tempo team, they're going to be able to keep things out in front of them. So I did set my number at a 4.5 here, getting the 5.5. I'm going to be taking a look at those points. And I do think that both of these teams struggle a little bit with their offense. Did set my total at a 150.5, even though Kobe Rogers has been able to give you 16 points per contest. It's been an inconsistent Wichita State offense, but a defense rising up. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Wichita State. A19-A20 was supposed to be Canisius versus Fairfield. It appears as though this game is going to be postponed. I apologize if it's actually not postponed, but that's it. It's saying postponed. So we move on to A21, A22 on the betting board. Mount St. Mary's amount is going to be hitting the road. They're going to be facing off against Iona. Iona is a favorite of 4 points. Total on this game going to be getting it at a 143, and with Iona, I did set them as favorites of 8 points. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It's an Iona team that really has been able to rise up. I've been very impressed by what I've been seeing out of them recently, as they had a rough start to the season, and it is still an Iona team that is a bit wobbly. They come in having lost each of their last 2 games. The defense, though, has been there for this team. They have given up fewer than 70 points in 3 of their last 4 games, going up against a Mount St. Mary's team that they're just not the same team defensively that they have been in past years, and much of that is because they don't have those demonstrative rebounders like we've seen in the past. 69 plus points allowed for their last 5 games, and the Mount has really cranked up their tempo. Typically, Mount St. Mary's, team that ranks in like the bottom 75 in terms of total possessions per game this season. They're a top 125 team with this regard, and when Mount St. Mary's was making the NCAA tournament a few years ago, they had guys like Nana Akpu, Malik Jefferson that were doing such a good job on the glass, and if you look at the overall rebound rate of Mount St. Mary's, it's 118th. That's not too bad, but still, this just doesn't feel like the same team on the glass with having not a single guy that gives you north of 4.8 rebounds per game. Joey Cordelia is that guy. He's been able to give you 7.5 points, 4.8 boards, but for the Mount as well, north of 15 turnovers per game. Bottom 50 team in all of college basketball in terms of being able to take care of the ball. Now they have to go up against the 7-footer in Osborne Chema that since he's been back for the last 5 games for Iona, he's able to give you a block and a half per contest. Now it is an Iona team that if you have trepidation with them, they are shooting 65% the free throw line in a nip and tuck game. That could be a little bit rough, but this is also an Iona team that has done a really good job with their takeaways. They are generating about 9.5 steals per contest, and if you look on terms of steals force on a per possession basis, this has been one of the better teams in all of college basketball, as they're generating a turnover on 22% of possessions. That is number 13 in all of college basketball, going up against a Mount St. Mary's team that has not been able to do a great job of being able to take care of the ball in general, and it's a Mount St. Mary's team that they shoot in the low or the mid-30s from 3-point range to start with. Iona, if they have had a kryptonite, has been allowing opponents to make their threes, about 271st in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, Mount St. Mary's has been able to hunker down from the outside when they've been at home. At home, opponents are shooting 20.7% from 3-point range in a road/neutral court environment that goes to about 36% from 3, and with this Iona team, They're not an amazing three-point shooting team, but they're not bad. They shoot about 34.3% from three-point range. Joel Brown has been a nice facilitator for this offense, not giving you a lot of scoring with about 6.5 points per contest, but 3 assists, 2 steals per contest. As a matter of fact, for this Iona team, each of your top 6 scorers have given you at least 1 steal per contest, with Isaac Trout being the main guy. He has come in, he's been able to give you about 13.5 points per contest. I should say Iden Trout, as he comes over from Harvard, and you've been able to get 40% three-point shooting, about 12 points per contest out of Greg Gordon. I do think that with Mount St. Mary's having to have Dakota LaFew at the point guard spot and him turning the ball over 3 times per contest, seeing a big dip in his three-point shooting, that is going to cause for the Mount to not be able to pull this game out. So I did set Iona as an 8-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number, and with regards to this total, I did set it at a 144. I do think that Iona is going to be able to make a lot of those turnovers, live ball turnovers, and turn defense into offense. I do think you could get some late game fouling. So looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Iona. 823, 824 on the betting board. It is Illinois. They play us to Maryland. Maryland does find themselves as an underdog of 8 to 8.5 points. Your total on this game going to be getting it at a 138.5 to 139. Did set my total at 137. I'm going to be diving in on the under. It's a Maryland team that has been very good with their defense. Not a lot of qualms with that. Maryland does allow opponents to shoot north of 33% from three-point range, but in terms of percentage of shots that they allow from three-point range, they just run you off the arc. They're a top 20 team in all of college basketball in terms of lowest percentage of shots that do come from three-point range in Maryland. 19th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and it is a defense that travels. In a road/shoot-your-corner environment, they actually ascend into the top 15 with this regard. This is also an Illinois team that has been able to do a very solid job defensively as well, as we have seen a few issues ever since TJ Shannon's been out of the fold, as Illinois, they aren't giving up ever since Shannon has been out, more than 10 points more per 100 possessions rather than when he has been out there on the floor. But Illinois, different team defensively at home rather than on the road, giving up 18.7 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. They're still 23rd in the country in terms of overall points allowed on a per possession basis, which is a big reason why I did set them as a favorite of 9 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and even though this Maryland team does a very solid job being able to hold it down defensively, what form of offense are you going to be able to get out of this Maryland team that they just can't hit water if they fell out of a boat? They're in the bottom 30 in all of college basketball in terms of three-point shooting percentage, and in a road/shoot-your-corner environment, this slips into the bottom 15. You've got Jameer Young, who's been absolutely tremendous for this team. He's been able to throw in there about 19.5 points per contest, 4.5 boards, 3.7 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, but you just need a little bit of help around him. You do get that down low in Julian Reese, who's been able to give you 9.5 rebounds per game. It's a Maryland team that they don't do a bad job on the glass, with Reese being able to give you about 2.4 blocks per contest, and Maryland has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the three-point arc in their own right, as they just continue to run you off the three-point line. And for Maryland, they actually allow opponents to shoot 36.7% from three at home, 29.5% in a road/shoot-your-corner environment. But this is an Illinois team that they do a really good job of being able to rebound by committee, and without having in the fold TJ Shannon, this team has been able to find some really good production. As Justin Harmon, he's been able to see some more minutes. He's now averaging double figures for a team that is number 12 in the country, Illinois is, with regards to their rebound rate. As even with Shannon out of the fold, you've got each of your top 6 scorers that are currently out there for this team giving you at least 3.9 rebounds per game, with having Luke Goody being able to give you 4 boards, shooting 40% from three-point range. Coleman Hawkins, he had 6'10", shoots 38% from the outside, gives you nearly 3 assists, 10.5 points, 5.5 boards. He's starting to step up. Quincy Guerrier, your rebounder, at about 7.5 rebounds per game. And then Marcus Omask, he has turned into Mr. Do-It-All. In the 4 games that this team has been without Shannon, he has gotten at least 5 assists in every one of them, averaging about 2.7 turnovers per game. You'd like to see that come down a little bit, but he's doing a lot of what he did while he was over at Southern Illinois in the Missouri Valley Conference, taking over games, and I think that that's going to be too much for Maryland to overcome. I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a low-scoring slog, as Illinois, they pulled out a little bit of a nip-and-tuck game against Michigan State, and to the credit of Maryland, this team has given up 67 points or fewer in every single one of their last 5 games, and I believe that they have allowed 2 opponents to exceed the 70-point plateau. So, did set my total at 137. I'm going to be looking at the under of Illinois. Want to lay up to 8.5 with them. 825, 826 on the betting board. St. Peter's hits the road face-off against Manhattan, and Manhattan does find themselves as underdogs of 6.5 points, seeing straight 5.5 out there as well. 126.5 to 127.5 is your total, and for St. Peter's, going to make them a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. It is a St. Peter's team that has been able to do a solid job defensively, and for St. Peter's, the main form of their offense is generating second and third chances, as this is a team that ranks in the top 35 nationally in terms of percentage of missed shots that do turn into an offensive rebound. And this is a St. Peter's team that has been able to do a pretty stinking good job on defense. As St. Peter's, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 53rd in all of college basketball. They are giving up about 7.5 points more per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. But I just fear that St. Peter's is just not going to be able to score enough to be able to cover this margin, as you've got a St. Peter's team that does have Corey Washington out there in the fold, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards per contest, and Michael Hoagie is someone I do like for this bunch as well. He's been able to chip in there right in the neighborhood of about 10 points per contest, but now he's dealing with a little bit of an injury, so that is something that you do want to be very mindful of. And for St. Peter's, they were able to roll without him against Mount St. Mary's in their most recent game, and credit where credit is due for St. Peter's. I don't think that they have allowed a single opponent to exceed the 71-point plateau against them thus far this season, but for Manhattan, this is a team that, even though the offense has been rough to say the least, as Manhattan, they have scored 71 points or fewer in regulation, so this takes out of the form of overtime that they've had in every single one of their games thus far this season. But I do think that they're going to be able to match up down low with Sidhu Traore, being able to give you about 9 boards, 11.5 points per contest. It's been an team that they're only shooting about 30% from three-point range and 14 turnovers per game has been a little bit unsightly, but they have found a nice point guard in Shaquille Bender, who's able to give you 13 points, 3.5 boards. He's been able to give you a little bit of facilitation with right around about 1.3 steals per contest as well. Having Brett Rumpel out of the fold has been rough, but just Jaden Winston being your main trigger man in terms of being able to dish out the ball with 2 steals, 4.5 assists per game. That is big. This is a team that does a good job of being able to generate their turnovers, and it's a Peacocks team that, even though they're one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball, they are turning the ball over 13.5 times per contest. I think that this is going to be a very grimy, very yucky game in which you're going to be seeing a lot of dead possessions really on both sides, which is why I did set my total of 128.5. Now, with Manhattan, them being 245th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, that's an issue. And St. Peter's has been dealing with a few injuries as well. It is a Manhattan team that they've now given up at least 71 points in 4 of their last 5 games. And for St. Peter's, they're starting to bust through a little bit more with their offense, at least 67 points each of their last 5 games. So I do think that this is a tad bit low, and I do think that Manhattan is going to be able to hold in there to the point of where we get some late game fouling for this over. So I did set my line at 4.5. Going to be taking the points with Manhattan and going to be taking a look at this total over as well. Another skip on this one, 827, 828, Niagara and Siena. This is a game that has been postponed. If for some reason it was not postponed, I do apologize, but that said, since there's no money to be made on this game, most likely until Monday, we do move on to 829, 830 on the betting board. Marist is going to be playing us a Rider, and Rider does find themselves as an underdog of 3 points. So on this game, it is 132.5. This Marist team continues to be one of the best defenses in all of college basketball. Certainly do have your trepidations with this offense, so on they go up against a Rider team that's been one of the most deplorable teams in terms of three-point shooting percentage in all of college basketball. So this is a spot where I did set Marist as a 5-point favorite. I am going to be willing to lay it. It is a Marist team that they should have okay from three-point range. They have been rough at the free throw line, so if you do have a little bit of trepidation with laying the number, that is part of the reason why. But this is a Rider team that just honestly hasn't done a lot for you defensively either. 243rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 16.4 points more per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. Now, Rider has by far the best scorer in this game, Mervyn James, 20.5 points, 7.5 boards, a block, a steal per contest while shooting 41% from three-point range. But it's a Rider team that has relatively low tempo, that turns the ball over 13 times per contest. You've had TJ Weeks turn it on, shooting about 35.5% from three-point range after he got off to a rough start to the season. But for this Rider team, it still is very hit or miss with what you're going to be able to get out of this offense, because they did play that overtime game against Canisius to be able to prop up their numbers just a little bit. So if you take a look at regulation and regulation only, also played an overtime game against Penn as well to be able to help out those numbers. But it is a squad that they have scored 71 points or fewer in regulation and now 4 out of their last 6 games. And it's a Marist team that still has been able to bear down on defense. They have allowed north of 71 points just once this season, even in the game against Quinnipiac that they lost a few nights ago. They only gave up 66 points to a rather up-tempo Quinnipiac team. It's a Marist team that's doing a relatively good job being able to shut teams down from 3, top 40 with that regard. They do a nice job of being able to hit the glass by committee as well, with Max Allen being able to lead the way with about 4 boards, 12.5 points per contest. And this isn't a Marist team that necessarily has that one guy that's going to go out there and it's going to give you like a double-digit amount of boards or anything like that. Isaiah Brickner, who has been really a main facilitator for the team with 3 assists, he's right now the only guy in the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, logging 5.5 boards per contest. For a Marist team that they shoot about 33% from three-point range. Marist in terms of rebound rate at home about 52%, 211th overall in all of college basketball. But for Rider, I do still think that they're going to be able to win this battle on the glass just a little bit with Tariq Ingram being able to give you in that neighborhood about 7 or so rebounds per game as well. This is a Rider team that's about 85th in the country, but I just don't think that they're going to get a lot of clean looks down low. Marist past 2 seasons has been a top 75 team in regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And for Marist, they're starting to find a little bit more out of Jaden Collins as well. Collins has been able to come in, give the team 9+ points each of the last 4 games, and has also given the team a little bit more in terms of steals. 10 steals in the last 4 games as well. So Marist is doing a good job of being able to turn teams over. They're a little bit of a low-tempo team that has been able to generate about 7.5 steals per contest, and this is a Rider team that, while they do a very bad job of being able to shoot the 3, well, so giving it up from 3-point range as well, that's a little bit of a deadly duo, as Rider about 175th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. I do think that Marist, in a nip-and-tuck game, and a game that I think is going to be slowed down, is going to be able to hold it down, which is why I did set my line at 5, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number in with Rider really slowing things down the last few seasons. Rider used to be a little bit more of an up-tempo team. They're about 100th in the country in terms of total possessions per game this season, but in a road/neutral environment, they do play about 2 possessions per game fewer than they do at home. I do think that this becomes a little bit of a lower scoring slog. So did set my total at a 131, looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Marist. 831, 832 on the betting board. It is Tulane. They hit the road to face off against Tulsa. Tulsa's a home underdog of 2 to 2.5 points. This game is 157.5, and this is an ordeal where I did set my total at a 167. This is not a typo. I actually did set this at a 167. I am looking at the over in this spot. You've got a Tulane team that is just absolutely running it and gunning it for humanity. Out of your 362 Division I teams, Tulane 11th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Tulsa 57th in the country, and you've got a Tulsa team that, if you look at the raw defensive metrics, they've actually been a relatively good team. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are 28th in all of college basketball. Since conference play has started, though, we have seen these numbers go way in that upward, as overall for the season, Tulsa giving up 92.4 points per 100 possessions. In conference play, 104 points allowed per 100 possessions. That is mainly due to the fact that Tulsa played one of the most firm and soft schedules in all of college basketball in the non-conference. Now that they're playing against real opponents, they're starting to give up points. This is a Tulsa team that ranks 28th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot 26.7% from 3 at home. But again, they hosted so many bad teams at home that's hard for me to take these numbers very legitimately. Meanwhile, it's a Tulane team that is allowing in a roadside-neutral environment for opponents to shoot 39.8% from 3-point range. So I do think that you're going to get a plentiful amount of points in this one. It is a Tulane team that, when they're away from home as well, they are giving up right around about 15.3 points more per 100 possessions. But I do think that Tulane has enough firepower to be able to get the job done. I did set them as a 3-point favorite. You just take a look at the versatility that you've got on this Tulane team, and it's just absolutely awesome. You've got Kevin Cross, who stands around 6'8", giving you 16.5 points, 8 boards, 5 assists, shoots 36% from 3-point range. Now, Tulane has played a little bit more slowly in the last few games because they have been dealing with a few ailments, and this is not the world's deepest team to start out with. Trey Williams being out the fold, that has hurt this team a little bit, but that said, now they're relying a little bit more on Greg Glenn, someone who transfers in from Michigan. He's been able to give the team a little bit of production. He's been able to come in, give the team a few minutes. I think that he's going to get a few more moving forward, but you got Jalen Forbes, who shoots 34% from 3, 15 points per contest, and this is a Tulane team that each other top 5 scorers. They all give you at least 12.9 points per contest. Really, the only guy shooting below 33.9% from distance is Colin Holloway, which he's supposed to be a little bit of a designated scorer for the team, but Tulane, despite their up-tempo nature, they only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest. This is a Tulsa team that they have been able to generate 8.8 steals per contest, having a duo in PJ Haggerty along with Kobe Williams, combining for about 4.3 steals. Along with that, 7 assists per contest, with Williams 12.5 points on 32% 3-point shooting. PJ Haggerty 18.5 points, 4.5 boards. Doesn't shoot it well from 3-point range. It is a Tulsa team that they themselves are a little bit sloppy with the ball, about 14 turnovers per game, but this is a Tulsa team that ever since conference play has began, they've been starting to bleed some more points. It is a team that has been able to get you at least 75 points in 3 out of their last 4 games, and it is a Tulane team that, against D1 competition, because we did see them play against quite a few teams at the non-D1 ranks. They have certainly been giving up their points as well, so I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be rather up-tempo. I do think that with having now Jalen Forbes be able to rise up as well, a guy that last season averaged 18.5 points per contest, got off to a rough start to the season, but now has been able to restore some order. This man has been able to put in their 12-plus points, and now 6 of the team's last 7 games that you're going to be seeing a high-scoring affair. There's going to be a lot of possessions in this game, so I did set my total at 167. I'm looking at the over, and with Tulane, set them as a 3-point favorite. Going to be willing to lay the 2 to 2.5 with them. 833, 834 on the betting board. It is Illinois State. They play as a Valparaiso. Valpo is an underdog of 9 points. Your total on this game is between 136 and 136.5. I did set my total at 136.5, so here at the 136, it's the max I'm going to be willing to take over, but I'm going to be willing to take it over. Illinois State, a little bit of a lower possession team going up against a Valpo bunch, and they just have had a tough time being able to put the ball in the basket. Outside the top 250, there's a point scored on a per possession basis. When it comes to Valparaiso, you've got Isaiah Stafford, who's done a nice job, giving you about 16.5 points per contest. It is a Valparaiso team, though, that they've only got one guy that's been able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game in Jackson Edwards, as they did have Jerome Palm earlier in the season, doing a nice job down low in the first 5 or 6 games. Is averaging 6+ rebounds per contest, and ever since then that's dropped off the face of planet Earth, and has resulted in Valparaiso being out of sorts on defense as well. They're now 236th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Illinois State, they've tumbled a little bit as well. They're down to about 160th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Recently, they have been having a little bit of a rough go of it. Good news is they get to face off against a Valparaiso team that is only shooting about 30.7% from 3-point range, as Illinois State has been hit or miss with regards to being able to guard the 3-point arc. With Illinois State, they're allowing opponents to shoot 35.5% from 3-point range, as 286th in all of college basketball. And while Illinois State doesn't necessarily have that one go-to guy, they're a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of team, with 4 separate guys give you between 9.3 and 13.1 points per contest. Miles Foster has been your main rebounder with about 7.3 boards per contest, but it's an Illinois State team that they themselves, they only shoot about 28% from 3-point range, but they get to go up against a Valparaiso team that has really had a tough time being able to guard the 3-point arc as well. They're allowing opponents to shoot 35% from 3-point range in a road/neutral court environment as well. That is outside the top 225, and when it comes to Illinois State, them not necessarily having a forte down low has not really hindered them, because while they don't necessarily have that one guy that's going to give you a double-digit amount of rebounds, they do a good job by committee, ranking right around 90th in all of college basketball with this regard. You do have some size with Brandon Lieb being right around 7'1", coming in from Illinois, giving you about 4 boards per contest, and Dalton Banks has become a main facilitator for this team, 3.5 assists per game while shooting 34.5% from 3-point range. It's an Illinois State team that's rather mid-tempo. It's been a rough go of it for them on offense, 71 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, and we have seen this defense act up. They've given up 70+ in 3 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, it is a Valparaiso team that, man, they are just getting absolutely destroyed defensively, as last time they gave up fewer than 70 points was that game against Chicago State, and that is really the only out of their last 10 games in which they have given up fewer than 70 points. I do think that you get just enough to go over in this spot. Did somebody total 136.5, so at the 136, looking at the overhand with Illinois State, want to lay up to 10 with them. 835, 836 on the betting board. UW Green Bay is going to be playing against Cleveland State. Cleveland State is an underdog of a point. Total on this game is between 140 and 141. With Cleveland State, made them the 2.5-point favorites. I'm going to be looking at them outright on the money line. I do think that Cleveland State is going to continue to see a little bit of regression with regards to their 3-point shooting, but this is a much better offensive team than we did see a season ago. Tristan and Aruna has been able to give you 17.5 points, 6.5 boards, 3 assists, steal and a half per contest while shooting 34% from 3 for a Cleveland State team that as a whole, they shoot 36.7% from 3-point range. Now, Cleveland State really lacking on the glass, but it's not like the UW Green Bay team has necessarily been masters of being able to hold it down low. They're about 148th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, which is actually rather impressive considering the fact that they've only got one guy on the roster that's giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. That'd be Elijah Jones. He's keeping up with the Joneses with about 6.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, it's a Cleveland State team that is about 251st in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. And for UW Green Bay, I mean, this is just a scrappy team that they find a way to be able to get the job done. It just feels like it's a different approach every single game with them, but now they have to shut down a Cleveland State team that is shooting about 36.5% from 3-point range in a road/neutral court environment. And for UW Green Bay, credit where credit is due. They're shooting as a collective about 35.1% from 3. That jumps to 35.7% at home with Noah Reynolds really going into takeover mode. 18.5 points, 3.5 boards, 4.5 assists, shooting 38% from three-point range. You've got Jones who chips in there about 9 points per contest, and nobody else on the roster gives you north of 7.8 points per game, but that man that does give you 7.8 points per game, freshman David Douglas, has been able to step up for the team recently. He has given the team a combined 41 points in the last 2 games. That has been able to transform a UW Green Bay team that has been in the bottom 50 with regards to total possessions per game into being able to give you a little bit more on offense. Still not a supreme offense by any stretch of the imagination, but has gone to at least 68 points in now each of their last 6 games. It is a Cleveland State team that they themselves have allowed at least 70 points in each of their last 4 games, but I do think that they're going to be able to bounce back a little bit more here against a UW Green Bay team that they still are a relatively low-tempo team. It is a Green Bay team that's been able to do an okay job of being able to guard the three-point arc. They're 121st in the country with this regard, allowing opponents to shoot just 30.1% from three-point range when they are at home. This is a Cleveland State team that has been able to do a pretty solid job of being able to generate some turnovers as well. Last 2 years, they've been a top 100 team with this regard, and Cleveland State, to their credit, 88th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage with this Cleveland State team as well. You've got Drew Lauder, Tate Williams combining for about 25.5 points per contest, combining shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range, and then when you've got someone like Jason Woolrich, who's able to give you 9.5 points, shoot north of 40% from the outside, and Cleveland State just having a plethora of weapons to be able to shoot from the outside. I do think the Cleveland State gets the job done on the road, so I did set Cleveland State as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them outright on the money line, and I think both of these teams play a slower brand and play a little bit more defense oriented in this one. So my total 134.5. So also looking at the under to go along with the Cleveland State money line. 837, 838 on the betting board. Louisiana Tech is going to be playing us a Liberty. Liberty Biberty is a 3.5 point underdog. Totals between 131.5 and 132.5. Set Liberty as a 2.5 point underdog. So being able to get 3.5, I'm going to be taking a look at the points. Liberty coming off of a performance against Jacksonville State that the best way of putting it is deplorable. They scored 51 points in that game, and that's going to happen from time to time with a Liberty team that is outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. Despite that, Liberty still 84th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, going up against a Louisiana Tech team that is only clocking in 195th with this regard. Now, Louisiana Tech, they've been masters on defense. You've got someone down low that's able to give you a double-double and has really been able to produce for this team in Daniel Bacho. I absolutely love his game. And then on top of that, this is a Louisiana Tech team that they do a nice job of being able to force some turnovers. So you say Crawford is your main man with about 14.5 points, 2 steals, shoots 41% from three-point range for a team that they generate about 8.2 steals per contest, but they go up against a Liberty team that does rank in the top 50 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis for Liberty. Their defense does fall off the map a little bit when they are away from home, giving up 15.4 points more per 100 possessions in a road/shoot-required environment rather than at home. And for Louisiana Tech, they rank 56th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. On top of Bacho, they've been able to get some good production out of Trevon Magnum. Not giving you a ton of scoring last season. He was much better with that regard, but is giving you about 4.5 boards, a steal at 6'8". He just does a little bit of everything for this team. But this is a Liberty team that, despite the fact that they lose their top scorer in Darius McGee, it is still a team that is very much functioning as a good cohesive unit. They shoot 36% from 3. Now, if you do have trepidation with Liberty, they are shooting just 66% at the free throw line. But with that said, of their top 5 scorers, you do have 4 of them shooting at least 71.4% at the free throw line. You've been able to get good facilitation as well. Of your top 5 scorers, 4 of them give you at least 2.7 assists per contest, including main scorer Kyle Rohde, who stands 6'7", 6'8", 4.5 boards, 2.5 assists, 13 points per game on 36.7% three-point shooting. I do love what he's been able to bring to the table for this team. Down low, you've been able to have Joe Van Sant give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. I do think that Daniel Bacho wins that battle down low, but I do think that Liberty going to be able to hold up with their defense. 70 points or fewer surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games. Lone exception against an up-tempo Alabama team. Meanwhile, for Louisiana Tech, it's been all over the place for them. In their last 5 games, they have given up 79, 73, 55, 81, and 52 points. So that has been a wild ride, to say the least. I do think that you get just enough out of this Liberty team to be able to push this total over. I do think that you get some late game fouling, and this is a Liberty team that, though they're very slow, they're very efficient with regards to their scoring. So this is a spot where I'm going to be taking a look at the over. So I told 132.5, and at anything north of 3, going to be taking the points. With Liberty, 839, 840 on the betting board. Murray State is going to be playing us in Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa is in a pick'em game / as a 1 point underdog. Total odds game between 143 and 143.5. Said Murray State as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay this summer. Now with Murray State, it's a very intriguing bunch. In the bottom 75 in terms of total possessions per game, in the bottom 75 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they really protect the ball. A top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They shoot about 33% from three. It's not terrible. It's not great. You've got Rob Berry, Jacoby Wood, who've been able to combine for about 27.3 points per contest. Wood has been laying the wood to teams, shooting 43% from three-point range, but you've got pretty much 5 different guys that give you at least 9.5 points per contest, and they do a good job of rebounding by committee. 4 of their top 5 scorers have been able to log north of 4 rebounds per game. So despite the fact that your leader in rebounds is Nick Ellingston, and he's been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game coming in from Eastern Illinois, this team has still been able to do an okay job on the glass. Not necessarily an amazing job, but with this Murray State squad, they've been able to hold their own at about 214th of the country with regards to total rebound rate. And this is a Northern Iowa team that is currently a wreck on defense. And for Northern Iowa, they've got a negative rebound rate at home. Meanwhile, a positive rebound rate on the road. They have been one of the more inconsistent and strange teams in all of college basketball. I think that that's the best way of being able to put it. As for Northern Iowa, 238th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. A squad that has been able to shoot in the high 30s from three-point range, and a squad that they themselves don't really turn the ball over a ton. Bowen Bourne was a little bit banged up to begin the season. You can tell that he was not 100%. Now he's really finding his form with about 15 points per contest, shooting in the neighborhood about 34% from three-point range, but 15 plus points in 4 of the team's last 5 games. Nathan Heisey has been your main three-point shooter, shooting about 39.7% from three-point range for a team that they only turned the ball over about 11 times per contest. Northern Iowa in recent years has bumped up their tempo a little bit, and they're right around about 100th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And what I do find to be very interesting about Northern Iowa as well, their play really doesn't drop off when they're away from home. They haven't gotten too much of a bump at home, but I mean, they do a solid job on the road, shooting about 35.5% from three-point range at home. On the road, it's pretty much a flat 35%. The team, though, they just don't necessarily have too much of a post presence. You've got someone that stands right around 6'11", Jacob Hudson, who's able to give you 9.5 points, 4 boards, and that's where you can really hurt this Murray State team. But with Murray State not having a whole lot of ball pressure on them, as neither of these teams generate a lot of turnovers, and both of these teams really slowing down their tempo. You've got an Northern Iowa team that has given up 63 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games. You've got yourself a Murray State team that they themselves have given up fewer than 60 points in 3 out of their last 4 games. It does make it very intriguing. I do, though, think that the offenses are going to be able to take off in this game. I do feel like these two teams have been the beneficiaries of some, shall we say, positive shooting luck with regards to the defensive side of things. And for Murray State, even though they've been doing a great job with their defense, this offense has still been a constant. 75 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Northern Iowa team that they themselves, they've fallen on some tough times offensively, 67 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 5 games. But all in all, it has been a team that still has been able to do a solid job being able to throw the ball in the basket. If you want to date it back a little bit further, this is a Northern Iowa team that has been able to get past the 70-point plateau in all but 3 out of their last 13 games. So I do think that you're going to see a nice scoring bump from a pair of teams that have played a few lower scoring games recently. Did set my total 146. I think that this could be a game close enough for some late game following. So looking at the over, and with Murray State, did set them as a favorite of 2. So taking them on this pick'em line. 841, 842 on the betting board. Delaware, it's a road face off against UNC Wilmington, and Wilmington is a favorite of 5 points. Your total is between 145 and 145.5. So Wilmington has a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It's a UNC Wilmington team that has been able to do a really nice job of taking care of the ball. A top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Not quite the same defensive team that we've seen in the past. They are ranking outside the top 180 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not like this Delaware team has been anything incredible with regards to their defense. 117th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So I will say this about the Delaware defense. They're giving up 5 points fewer per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than when they are at home. This Delaware team is a top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a road/neutral court environment, outside the top 200 when they're at home. So I do find that to be a little bit strange. It's a Delaware team that has a lot of Swiss Army knife sort of pieces, like Jelon Trent, someone that at the point guard spot gives you about 4 boards, 4 assists, 10.5 points, can't shoot the ball to save his life, but gives you a little bit over a steal per contest. Jair Davis has been able to give you 6 boards, 18 points at 6'7", shoots about 32% from three-point range. It is a Delaware team that, as a whole, they do shoot about 34% from three-point range, and to the credit of this Delaware defense, they've been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the three-point arc on the road. Overall, they're about 168th in all of college basketball. Opponents shoot about 33.3% from three-point range against them in a roadside shoot court environment. And Wilmington, when they're on the road, they can't guard the three to save their lives. Opponents are shooting 36.7% from three-point range against them in a roadside shoot court environment. That just falls to 32% at home. So I do think that they're going to have a little bit of success against someone like a Gerald Drumgoulet, who's been able to give you about 35% three-point shooting, 12 points per contest. Gavon Riley to be able to shoot about 38% from the outside, 11 points per game. And Christian Ray to be able to give you 9 rebounds per game down low, but love the game of Trezarian White. I think that he's going to be the best player in this game, 20.5 points, 6 boards, shoots 37.5% from three-point range for a Wilmington team that out of their top 4 scorers, 3 of them do shoot at least 37.5% from three-point range. None of them above 37.8% from three-point range, so you've got just a bunch of equals on this team. It is a Wilmington team that ranks about 268th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Delaware more in that neighborhood, about 154th, but I do think that Wilmington going to be able to make do with all the offense that they're able to get from guys like Malik Hardenayes and Jakeem Phillips, who have been able to combine for about 24 points per contest. Both of these guys shoot it relatively well from three-point range, and with this Wilmington team, they just have been a different breed on offense this year than they have been in past years. 103rd in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and this is a Delaware team that is a little bit prone to having some doldrums on the road. They are scoring about 13.9 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are away from home, and I do think that that's going to be just enough for Wilmington to get it done in a game that I think is going to be a little bit more oriented to the offense between a pair of teams that are rather mid-tempo. So I did set my total at 146.5, looking at the over. And with Wilmington, I'm willing to lay up to 6 with them. 843, 844 on the betting board. Stanford plays FC Utah. Utah's a 1.5 to a 2-point road favorite. Your total on this game is 155.5. Did set my total at 152. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. Recognize that this Utah team has not necessarily been amazing defensively, but it is a bunch that is rather mid-tempo. And I do think that they're going to be able to rise up a little bit more here. Utah, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis last year, was a top 50 team in all of college basketball. They've got much of that core returning, and for Utah, about 66th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Fear that you do have is that they are giving up about 23.3 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot current environment rather than at home, and this is a Stanford squad that they themselves not been great on defense. 157th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a Stanford team that in Palo Alto, they have been significantly different with their offense. This is a Stanford bunch that is scoring about 22.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road, and this is a Utah team that they do see their scoring drop by about 10.8 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. But that said, I just do think that we are going to see a little bit of Coolidge with Cannon Carlisle, who all of a sudden has come from absolutely nowhere for Stanford, and in his 7 games, he's been able to give the team 14 points on 47% three-point shooting. It is a Stanford team, though, that they do have an issue being able to hold on to the ball, 13.3 turnovers per game. They were dealing with Jarrett Bynum being out with an injury in their last game as well. They were able to persevere, and they were able to get the job done against Oregon State, but that said, that is one of the best facilitators in all of college basketball. His 6.5 assists per game, that is a top 10 mark in all of college basketball, and you notice that against Oregon State, it took them quite a while to find their footing. This is a Stanford team as well that, despite the fact that they've got a lot of size, Maximilian Reynaud is a giant of the earth that's able to give you 9.5 rebounds per game. This team really doesn't do a good job of being able to hit the boards either. For the Stanford squad, they're ranking 195th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, and I do think the Carlson and company are going to be able to take hold of that. It's a Utah team that they do rank in the top 75 with regards to the rebound rate. Carlson is a true 7-footer that gives you 17 points, 7 boards, shoots about 35% from 3. Gabe Madsen is able to shoot 45% from the outside. As Utah as a whole, they do shoot 37.5% from three-point range. It does see a little bit of a fall off when they hit the road, but you don't see as much of a fall off with regards to rebounding, as Kiba Kita has been able to do a solid job. He's been able to give the team right in that pocket of about 6 or so rebounds per game. Raleigh Worcester has been able to give you north of 5 assists per contest, and this Utah team, they only turn the ball over about 11.9 times per game. They go up against the Stanford team that they really don't do a great job of being able to pressure the ball as well, and this is a Utah team that I do think is going to be able to hit some shots from the outside. Overall 31st in the country with their three-point shooting percentage, but still shooting about 35.5% from three-point range in a roadside shoot record environment. So I did set Stanford as a 4-point underdog, going to be willing to lay it with Utah. I did set my total 152. I do think that we're going to see the Stanford team cool down and be a little bit more disjointed with that injury to Bynum. So going to be willing to lay it with Utah, and I'm going to be taking a look at the under and wrap things up with 845, 846 on the betting board. Washington, it's a road face-off against UCLA. UCLA is an underdog of 3 points with your total of 141. 1. Recognize that Washington is a top 40 team with regards to total possessions per game. I just don't see how UCLA is going to be able to put the ball in the basket for an over. I set my total at 137.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. With Washington, they are playing up tempo, not like they've been the world's greatest offense. 75th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, I will give credit to the way that this Washington team has been able to travel. As for Washington, they're actually a top 50 offense when they're in a road/neutral court environment. They just don't see much of a boost when they're at home. Meanwhile, this is a UCLA offense that, whether they're at home, whether they're on the road, whether they're on planet Pluto, this team is not throwing the ball in the basket. UCLA, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 302nd in all of college basketball, shooting below 30% from three-point range. Sebastian Mack, as a freshman, he's honestly done a solid job. He's given you 14 points, 1.8 steals per game, but he only shoots 25% from three-point range. And of your top 5 scorers for UCLA, none of them shoot above 29% from three-point range. They've been dealing with a few injuries. Berkey Baitunkel, hopefully I said that correctly, he's now been in the fold, but now he's went cold with 5 points or fewer in 3 of the team's last 5 games. Will McClendon does shoot 40.5% from three-point range, but literally is the only player on the roster that shoots above 29% from 3. It's a bunch that they turn the ball over 12.5 times per contest, which doesn't sound bad until you throw in there the fact that the team is well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. The one thing that UCLA has actually done relatively okay is be able to defend, but even that against Utah, we saw them give up 90 points that just spiraled out of control. As UCLA currently, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're a team that clocks in right around about 81st, and they do see a little bit of a bump when they are at Pauley Pavilion. They're giving up just about 15 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside-neutral court environment, and this is a Washington team that they should be able to do a relatively solid job down low. Adam Bona, he probably is going to be able to win that battle with his 6.5 rebounds per game. But Keon Brooks, he's be able to give you 20.5 points, 7.5 boards, shoots 43% from three-point range. Really, other than Bona, you don't necessarily get a ton down low out of this UCLA team that currently, in terms of their rebound rate, they're hovering right in that neighborhood, about 158th in all of college basketball. Washington, we're around about 134th. They found a way without fronting Kepadog, who's been dealing with a little bit of an injury, and then Xavier Wheeler, though he does have his turnover issues, he does give out 6.6 assists per contest. You've got Moses Wood, who's been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range, chipping in there a few rebounds. You've also got someone who I think is very undervalued in 6'10", Willem Breidenbach, who's been able to shoot like 50% from 3 at 6'10". He's a guy with glasses. He's been dealing with a little bit of injury. You only saw in that game against Arizona State like 8 minutes, but he's been really able to do a solid job for this Washington team. And UCLA, I think that they give a better effort than they did a few nights ago. I think Mick Cronin gets in their guys, but they're just frankly not a good team right now. I set my line at 5.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with this Washington bunch. Set my total at 137.5. So also diving in on the under, and that will wrap things up for the Sunday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we have fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks to Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports for joining me in the last segment, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. And these up coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Unplug your cleaning routine with the Ryobi 18-volt 1 Plus cordless cleaning lineup. From the soap-dispensing telescoping power scrubber to the advanced stick vacuum, Ryobi has a solution for every cleaning task. One battery powers over 300 products, giving you the power to do more, exclusively at the Home Depot.